Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Tonight, with the Gauntlet, we are playing Dad Comes In, which is a game by Evan Saft, kind of riffing on Hadestown and the Orphean myth in the underworld. Um, so this is part of our kind of summer duet series. I'm running 6 from the Racial Justice and Equality bundle in the next few weeks. So yeah, they've been really interesting so far. My name is Donna. My pronouns are he, him. And tonight I'm playing the lover, who is Penelope, she, her. I guess we'll give a quick intro or a bigger intro to our characters after the general one.
And I'm Leah, she, her, playing the singer, Milos, he, him.
Okay. So we have a set of questions for the singer and the lover. Do you want to start first, or will I, Leah?
I'm happy to go.
Okay.
So, as the singer, my questions are what first inspired you? And the answer is the dancing of the water and light in the brook where I played as a child. Everything was movement and joy and partnership. It's what all my melodies strive after. What do I want to change about the world? Everyone is too consumed with everyday things, rushing about eating without tasting, looking without seeing, walking without feeling. I want to force them to stand still with awe and give beauty its due. And what first struck me about the lover, her laugh, not quiet and delicate, but full, generous, and dancing.
Great. And for me, what was my first great love? The king of the underworld, who appeared to me in dreams and promised me the underworld if I would love him. And what about the world will never change? The ability of those in love to lie to themselves about their lover and themselves, anything that will help their love survive. And what first struck me about the singer, the way they took time to see the beauty in every little thing, as if each moment was a gift. How's that sound? Okay, cool. So, after we do introductions, we go into Act Two, The Descent. We follow our characters' separate parallel journeys into the underworld through a series of stages. In each stage, one player will take the part of the underworld and describe an aspect of the journey, followed by the other player describing an aspect of their relationship. They will then play out a short scene together. Okay, so the first scene is the ferry. Um, and the instructions here for the singer are, and all of these are in like sing format, but I don't think you have to sing, right? I'm not sure the designer is expecting us to sing. But sing of the dead's transport to the underworld. What form does it take? A boat, a carriage, a train, a road? And as the lover, I will speak of the first gift the singer gave to me. What form did it take? Was it mundane, lavish, an item, an idea? And then we will together play out the lover's departure from the world of the living and what price do they have to pay. Um,
All
so
right.
I'm not sure. Do you want to take your questions first, or will I?
I'm happy to take a swing at it.
Okay.
All right. I think, it is a boat, but it's a raft of, the thinnest, most delicate branches kind of woven together like a basket, much too thin to be a raft, much too delicate to bear weight. There's gaps between them. It by all rights should sink, especially when someone sits on it. But, you know, threaded throughout the boat is kind of a pale gray smoke. If the branches are birch, it's kind of a similar silvery color, and it sits, not just doesn't sink, it sits higher in the water than it feels like it has any right to, even if it were a normal boat.
Okay, cool. And I speak of the first gift the singer gave to me. Um, I think it might have been at a grand feast. And maybe this was the singer's, Milos's, like debut performance or something like this. And rather than um, rather than sing a song that he had prepared, he sang an ode to Penelope, sort of an off the cuff performance. Um, so, like, really, really inspiring, but quite mundane. It was just a song, right?
Nice. I like it.
Okay. So, play out the lover's departure from the world of the living. What price do they have to pay? So you think Milosh is there at the gate to the underworld, or maybe on the bank of the river Styx, as Penelope sort of steps onto this impossibly light raft.
Interesting. So you think I witness your departure?
I mean, maybe.
Mhm.
Um, Certainly something we could do, or we
Mhm.
could just not have Milosh present at all.
Well, did you tell me you were leaving, or have I, like the opposite of a romantic comedy airport meeting, just chased not quite in time?
Yeah, um, maybe what happened is, I think that idea of the kind of reverse of the romantic airport
Mhm.
chase, right, works really well. Maybe Penelope leaves something behind, maybe a
Mhm.
more tangible gift, or something in her chambers, and Milosh knows exactly what that means.
All right, I think I'm probably not even quite present at the beginning of the scene. There's just, there will become the sound of footfalls in the distance as he tries to make it here in time. How does
Yeah.
Penelope look as she steps onto the boat?
um I mean, I think from Milosh's point of view, right, he can see her figure but doesn't see her face, right? So she might be has a cloak over her head and is facing away, looking into the underworld. And I think, I mean, this is probably what um, a good thing for Milosh's state of mind, right? That she is quite excited to be going into the underworld.
Mm.
Um, and she never looks back, right? So he um, never gets to make that last kind of final connection with her.
Does she have to pay a cost to get onto the boat? Does she have an invitation she shows instead?
I think there is. Um, I think she has to like present. So maybe the the raft is made of olive branches or whole olive trees, which are quite rare to be uprooted, and she has taken one from the farm where she's living and presented that, and that is the cost to enter alive, right? Is to give something really valuable, something kind of magical that helps this raft to travel across the river.
Nice.
Any other details you want to add from Milosh's point of view?
I guess my only other question is she alone on the raft or is anyone else traveling at the same time?
Oh, um, yeah, I don't know. Um, yeah, maybe there are a few of the recently departed, you know, who have had to pay their kind of funeral obols to get on the raft as usual.
Then I
Um,
think as Milosh runs up, there's a moment where, like, you see a sign of hope break across his face just because there are enough people on the raft that someone is occluding her from his sight. And then that person shifts and he kind of had paused further from the bank, with kind of a, "Ah, I was such an idiot. This would never have happened. Look." And then as the raft pushes off from the shore is when kind of the other people shift slightly and he can see her and he runs but doesn't get there in time.
yeah, so it's like the current of the river takes the raft and slowly turns it to travel, and then he can see her form on the raft. Yeah, I like that. Okay, yeah. So I think we can call that scene. So the second scene is called the messenger. The singer sings of your first conversation with the lover. Was it short, long? Did they take a shine to you? Did you get off on the wrong foot? And then the lover speaks of the god that delivers the message of your departure to the singer. Okay, we should have read ahead, obviously. What do they look like? What are gods like in this world? I guess we can retcon that easily enough.
Well, this could be how I learned to come
Yeah,
running.
exactly. And together we will then play out the messenger's story to the singer. How does the singer convince them to reveal the way to the underworld? Okay.
All right. Um, I think we first met, let's see, uh, during a storm. You know, during a storm, we were both away from the village where we live in the forest. Me to think about songs, you for whatever had brought you in there,
Mhm.
and sheltered under the same mighty tree as the rain came down. And as while we were there, I then improvised a melody harmonizing with the rhythms of the rain to pass the time. And I liked that you paused really to listen fully. And then we
Yeah,
began to speak of ourselves. Um, oh, and when we left, we had come from different paths, but we left the forest together. What do you think?
yeah. So I think if it's like is this a rainstorm or a full thunder and lightning
Oh,
experience?
full thunder and
Yeah.
lightning.
So I think, we have to maybe, or, we're just sitting, taking shelter initially, and then you start to play, and then to hear properly, I've got to edge a little bit closer, right? Um, and so it's probably like that moment that you realize that there's a connection there, right? That it's not just sheltering under the boughs of this giant tree. Yeah, I like that. So speak of the God that delivers the message. So um, yes, I guess it's got to be, a classic kind of Hermes style setup. Someone dusty from the road. The kind of the the typical cap of the 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 Hermes style god that we know. Um, and I think maybe he's not quite sure. The Hermes is not quite sure who he has to deliver the message to. Right? He's looking for someone who he kind of projects as being the lover's partner. And maybe Milosh is doing something like not. He's not singing. That quality isn't evident. Maybe he's working on the farm. Um, and then maybe it's like a working song that he breaks out to, and then like the laser focus of Hermes cuts to him. Um, and what are gods like? I mean, I think they're obviously human, but also obviously something else, right? There's like a magnetism in their bearing. No one can really look at them and not know for no particular reason. That there's just a feeling, right? There's some ineffable quality about them that makes them known as gods. So yeah, together we play out the messenger's story to the singer. How does the singer convince them to reveal the way to the underworld? Yeah. So I think this is the kind of token, right, that makes Milosh believe that she has gone. Um, it's some heirloom, maybe um, a a medallion or a necklace or something that she was never seen without.
Where did you get that?
Penelope wanted you to have it. I assume you are Milosh.
What do you mean wanted?
She could not bring it where she was going, and she bade me to deliver it.
This is ridiculous. What what kind of trick is this?
This is no trick. I mean, I have my moments, but in this instance, I am not tricking you.
I think Milish like examines the medallion, almost as though expecting to turn to dust or in some way be an illusion in his hand. Um, and without even responding from it, he just starts pulling out a bag and packing things into it for a journey. Um, and then says, when did she give this to you?
Um, this past hour,
You are a messenger. Will you go on ahead and tell her to wait?
she she will not wait.
Which way did you come? Which way should I set out walking?
You cannot follow her. You are immortal, and it is not something that you should do.
Like huffs his breath out for a moment and then says, the unlikeliest thing has its own place and time and season. And at this point, he does start plucking his instrument. And it's a series of discordant notes that don't sound properly like a song. But as he goes on talking, there starts to be a logic and a hidden resolution to them developing. And he says, you gods, you order our lives, you shape our days, you receive our sacrifices. And you, messenger, travel the world and see more than most. You have seen the impossible happen when it is the right time to do so. And I'm confident you know this is one of those times. And as he does it, he hits the final chord, which is as consonant and lovely as the rest was jarring.
And I mean, do you think maybe the discordant chords like cause Hermes some actual pain? You know,
Possibly.
yeah, it's um, and I think that final flourish at the end of the song is enough to kind of buy his goodwill, or at least to make him maybe relent to to Malish's pain. She has gone to the underworld. If you can follow her through the cave and to the river in time, maybe you can speak with her.
Lend me your speed, and we'll invite you to dance at our wedding feast. And he doesn't wait for an answer. He just takes off, hoping, in some way to be blessed by the god.
Yeah. I think Hermes likes Milosh's gumption, right? And whether it's, I mean, I think it seems like luck, but maybe to most onlookers, but Milosh feels like the divine providence upon his shoulders, or at least in his feet. Okay. Um, okay. Yeah. So I think we can wrap that unless you want to add any extra detail. Okay. Cool. So the next part is the gate. The singer sings of the dead's entrance to the underworld. Is it imposing, inviting, adorned with jewels, sparse and plain? And the lover speaks of how the singer won me over. Was it a long process, a grand display of affection, or something small? And then together we play the lover's entrance into the underworld. Are they alone? Are they determined? Are they regretful? Okay.
I think it's a kind of hazy waterfall almost, that when the river comes in, the river keeps going. People disembark the boat onto a pier that kind of juts out through a waterfall. And it's not as big as Niagara. It's just incredibly tall, though narrow. Only one person can walk through at a time. And there's kind of the haze of water droplets thrown off in many directions, the point where it's hard to know when you're entering the waterfall itself versus just the spray or when you've exited.
And I wonder, do we like see almost like in direct um, contradiction to our expectations. You know, when people pass through this great weight of waterfall, it's like they stand a little bit taller. Some of the weight of their lives is taken off them as they pass through. Yeah. Um, so I think the lover is won over, I think, quite slowly by Milosh. You know, they've obviously made a connection with that stormy um, sing along, but then it's maybe a slow process over um, weeks or months, as you know, any time that Milosh is singing, you know, while working or whatever, he just looks up and kind of sees Penelope listening, um, or maybe watching him, and then he maybe yeah, I think she kind of starts asking about the songs, right? The the original songs that he has composed, or the kind of strange to her ears variations on the kind of classic traditional songs of their people. Trying to like understand what kind of spark of genius he has brought to them. So yeah, I think a kind of a long process. Okay. So then we play out the lover's entrance into the underworld. So yeah, I think that waterfall, um, you know, maybe in polar opposite to how the dead act, you know, that weight definitely drags her down a little bit, and maybe this is the first time we see a little bit of regret, a little bit of doubt that this is the right path for her. Um, I think maybe she looks back now and looks through the waterfall and can kind of see, I don't know, like the darkness outside, the kind of light reflected on the river, um, and maybe sees that ferry, you know, start to go back around to the starting point. So even if she did wish to, you know, she could not.
Do you think anyone is waiting to meet her at the gate when she steps through?
Yeah, I think maybe there is. Um, you know, I think we can see like the recently dead go one way, right, and that is the kind of the, you know, a path through some kind of rocky cavern, um, and there's another way which they don't even think to take, and there is someone standing there looking at the same time kind of out of place and completely at home, right? So um, some servant of the king of the underworld, you know, you know, not quite tapping tapping an impatient foot, but you know, obviously this is not a usual duty for them.
I think the attendant asks you, you know, do you need a moment to refresh yourself, or are you ready for your audience now?
And I think like I look around and there's no obvious places to refresh yourself unless it's like take a sup out of the waterfall, and I think with a shrug, you know, I declare it must be time for the audience, right?
All right. And did your garments change at all when you passed through the waterfall, or are you still dressed in the way you were when you arrived?
Yeah, I think I'm still dressed in kind of that travel robe. I mean, I think it's wet, obviously, and maybe sodden now, unlike the dead's clothes. So yeah, it's not comfortable, and maybe she'll shrug out of it and kind of get down to her dress or her tunic to at least feel not quite so uncomfortable, but no packed light, no change of clothes or anything like that. So yeah, I mean, there's no magical transformation. I think it's just everything is kind of as it was before. Maybe the decay will come later. Yeah. Okay. I think that answers that question. Unless you want to add anything else? No? Okay, cool. So the next scene is the way. The singer sings of the promises he made to the lover. Were they sincere? Were they realistic? And the lover speaks of the secret path the messenger revealed to the singer. How is it hidden? How is it dangerous? And then we play out how the singer makes their way to the underworld. How long does it take them? Are there others that have tried the same path and failed?
Right. And can you read the two questions one more time?
Yeah. So the singer sings of the promises made to the lover. Were they sincere? Were they realistic?
All right. I think they were always sincere in the moment, but they were also made without a strong sense of timeline for doing them. So there were moments when the singer would promise, to have a settledness in a home they would build together. But for the singer, this is definitely a thing they would do one day, but not this particular day, or not a moment when this opportunity to sing came up. But those are all, little exceptions along the way to this big promise. The singer never lied, but they weren't very good about prioritizing the promises.
Yeah. And I mean, is this like nothing grandiose, just like everyday things, but just like not priorities in his mind?
I think the singer he's always better at delivering the grandiose promises. Those are more in his wheelhouse. It's this faithfulness in small things that's harder.
Okay, yeah, okay, I like that. So speak of the secret path and mystery revealed to the singer. So I think that burst of speed brings him to this cave up on the mountaintop, and but there's like a route through the cave which is quite um, I don't know, slippy. Like there's kind of a series of rocks, and the kind of slow dripping of the water through the cave has made him a little bit treacherous. Um, and I think if you have anything with you, you have to concentrate on taking the route and just use your hands to get down. You cannot bring anything with you on this journey. It would be too dangerous to kind of be carrying anything down here. And then I think it descends this way, like through the darkness. Maybe early on there's some luminescence from the cave, but it quickly goes completely pitch black. And if you're not carrying a torch, which you probably can't, then you're essentially taking your life in your hands to go down here no matter what. Yeah, so we play out how the singer makes their way to the underworld. How long does it take them? Are there others who have tried the same path and failed? How do you think Milosh tackles this obstacle?
Yeah, so I think for a long time he's walking along the banks of the river, but there's a sense that the other bank isn't like the one he's standing on. So he feels like he's sort of making progress, but not in a real way. There has to be some way to either get onto the river itself or cross it. And I feel like, he starts to get the impression, whether it's, exhaustion or whether it's real, that some of the fish in the river are people who tried to cross. He's not sure whether that's true or not. But I think the way he ultimately approaches it is he keeps walking until there's an enormous weeping willow by the banks, and then he plays the saddest songs he can, hoping it will droop further and further until he can walk across its trunk to the other side.
Yeah, so I think in terms of grand gestures, right, this works out perfectly, right? That the willow leans over, and then maybe do you think Milosh plays a slightly happier song after he holds on to the branch and then is just slowly whipped back over to the other side? But
I
yeah,
think he play. I think he sticks around on the other side of the river for a bit to play a thank you, a happier song for the tree after causing it to mourn for so long.
yeah. Um, do you think that the kind of happy music almost like brings those kind of lost, the people who've been lost trying to cross the river, are they like awakened a little bit by that song because it's something that reminds them of home? Or
Oh, I like that. I think almost like flying fish, maybe like leaping now
okay,
out of the water
yeah,
instead of just shadowy within it.
okay. Um, so yeah, I think that kind of answers the question. Um, so I guess we get a sense of a kind of a long journey as he goes down that bank and looking for the right place to cross, and maybe the sense of time is a little bit off, right? There's no day or night here, and he's not feeling hungry, and all of these kind of typical measures of time are just gone. Okay, great. So the next part is the town. The singer sings of those who dwell in the underworld. What do they look like? How is death unlike life? And how is it similar? And the lover speaks of what you hungered for in life. Why didn't your relationship sate that hunger? And then we play out the lover's arrival amongst the dead.
Hmm. I think there is a bit of that classic desaturation to death here. But instead of everything being grayed out and bland, it's more that everyone has held on to one thing about themselves rather than, having the full vibrancy of life or the total blahness of some depictions of the dead. So there might be someone who's kind of gone a little gray, except for like their hat, which is still like bright and was in some way important. People carry either a talisman or a trait that kind of stands for them in a bigger way now. Even if it might have been what their friends used to describe them by or how they thought of themselves as distinguished, it retains its vibrancy while everything else about them fades slightly.
Yeah. So they're encompassing their arete, right, in life. They are um, that one thing is all they are now. And could that be like an activity, or is it like, do you think it's always like a physical trait?
I think it's, if it's an activity, it has some kind of physical expression to it.
Mhm.
You can kind of you can see at a glance someone's distinctive trait they held on to, even if it doesn't always make sense, that you can tell immediately it's cooking, and
Yeah,
yet you can, right? It's
yeah,
that kind of
yeah.
vibrancy for everything. Just some things are easier to describe visually than other.
Okay. Um, so I will speak of what I hungered for in life and why didn't your relationship sate that hunger. I think um, I think I hungered for kind of absolute honesty, you know, um, the kind of warts and all description of what people were thinking or going to do, um, the kind that I would never have received, no matter how honest people thought they were being. That they were always lying a little bit, maybe about themselves or um, what kind of people they were, maybe to make a good impression, or maybe because they didn't really figure themselves out that well. And I think for Milosh as well, maybe tying in a little bit to the promises that he made, right? that kind of forthright honesty wasn't really in his thing, if that sounds fair. Okay. So together we played the lover's arrival amongst the dead. What do the townspeople beseech the lover to eat? Does the lover acquiesce or refuse them? So yeah, I think the lover arrives in town and is a little bit amazed at this kind of procession of people who are all one thing. Their hair or the way they speak or the way they knead the bread or the dough for bread and wine. Whatever it is that they are is their thing. And I think she just sits, maybe on the well or a fountain in the center of town, just to look at people walk by, and just to kind of figure them out and to see someone do something the best that they have ever done it. Yeah. So, what do you think the townspeople get her to eat or drink?
I think there's simply a well that people are drinking from to refresh themselves. And you almost can see sometimes that people have started to fade a little all over, but when they drink from this well, their signature trait is brightened, even if the rest of them remains wan. And someone holds out a glass to her or a dipper from this well. Does she drink that?
Yeah, I think she looks right at the king of the underworld servant who came to collect her with like a question, right? Like, is it? But I think he is like impassive and uncaring, disinterested, I guess is the proper word for it. And then I think um, she notices something about maybe the cup that has been offered to her. Like, it seems like such a lovely cup, and she drinks, and I don't think she gets the same like oomph that the dead get from it, but it's sweet fresh water. What's not to like?
Very fair. All right. We're about halfway through the track,
Yeah,
so would it be all right with you if we take like a 8-minute break for water and bathroom and things?
yeah. So I have 10 to, so we say we're back on the hour. That time?
Yep,
Yeah.
sounds good.
Okay. Perfect.
All right, see you.
Okay, so we're back, and the next part is the Guardian. The singer sings of your first fight with the lover. What was it about? How did it end? And then the lover will speak of what guards the underworld, the beast to construct, and how does it threaten the singer.
All right. Um, I I feel like the first fight could be. You said your first love was the king of the underworld, so he was already a part of your life before
Yeah,
this terrible mishap. Um, I feel like the fight might have been about some gift you'd received from him or a piece of jewelry that you were planning to wear to one of my concerts, and it wasn't until I learned where it came from that I was upset.
okay, yeah.
Does that sound reasonable? Like a
Yeah,
thing we might
yeah.
have thought about?
No, it sounds good, yeah. Because it's, total jealousy, right? For for this other person.
Actually, I think I have one like detail to add to that, which is I think, in one of my songs I wrote about you, I'd incorporated the piece of jewelry into it because it looked so beautiful on you and it was so well chosen to complement your looks. And then it was when I found out, I was furious.
Yeah, yeah, okay. You couldn't change the song, or maybe not, never sing it again, right? Because of this fury it arose. And okay, what do you think it was?
Mm,
Um, maybe like something quite simple, but like the colors in it would kind of match her eyes or something like that.
yeah, maybe earrings and they almost look quiet, missable when they're in your drawer, right? But when they're on somehow,
Yeah.
everything, it's not even that you look at the earrings, it's that you look more deeply at your eyes.
Yeah. Great.
And I'm angry because I feel like someone who gave you that gift, possibly, I'd never say this explicitly in the fight, knows you better than I do.
Yeah. Yeah. So how does it end? Do you think this is the kind of fury Milosh can get over, or is it just is it something almost like you can't wear those while I'm around, because
I think it ends in a pretty petulant way where like at one of my concerts following this, like you hear me sing a different song and it takes a bit to notice, but I've reused some of the like rhythmic structures of the song I wrote for you for what's now a very like satirical mocking song, not about you, right? But it's I don't sing your song again. Yeah, I write you new ones. And I took pieces of it and made it kind of a nasty song.
okay, yeah. I think this is like maybe is like a change in Milosh that I think she obviously sees like what's going on, or at least that there's this jealousy and that it's kind of warping their relationship, and this is maybe the kind of honesty that she would love to just have this argument and actually say what's going on, but he won't.
All
Okay,
right.
yeah. Speak of what guards the underworld, is that a beast, a construct? I think it's some kind of shining bronze creature, um, like an automaton, and I think it's usually just so like physically overbearing that no one could dare to get past it. But also, it's got this kind of shiny reflection in the bronze that is a bit beguiling. If you try to think how to get past it, other than by fighting, it you're not able to concentrate on your plan. So it's kind of a double whammy. Um, and yeah, I think maybe it smells that Milosh is still alive, and then um, it's not being given permission to let him pass, and so
Mm.
it's just going to crush him underfoot, or maybe like throw him in the river. Maybe there's like a part of the river that passes by here, passes by the gate, that he would be thrown into and kind of end all the way back where he started.
I think I think Milosh's approach to this is that he's going to play a dancing song. And his goal is not so much to have an effect on the Guardian, it's to start enticing other members of the dead to come and be part of this like partner swapping, joyful kind of think of it as a mix between a square dance and a line dance, but a lot of moving together. And he wants to ultimately cloak himself in the dead till his scent is disguised and he can slip by among them.
Yeah, so like when he is not obviously trying to get past the Guardian, maybe the Guardian kind of like sits down on its hunkers, right, and just kind of observes. And there's like this dizzying, like there'll be a montage, right, um, of them whirling around in dance, and maybe there's some clothes swappage that goes on as well. Yeah, and yeah, I think that smell, right, that after a couple of sets, right, he no longer smells quite like the living. Do we think that kind of affects him? Um,
I think it's not so much that as the dance itself. So by the time kind of he's past the guardian and the dance kind of comes to an end and people spin off or newly partnered even wander off, the one where he's just exhilarated. He's kind of entered too much into the dance too, and almost forgets like where he's going and why. He just looks happier than we've seen him in any non-flashback period, just
Mhm.
unburdened, and then the burden kind of comes back to him slowly. I guess in part, like as people are breaking off in partners, perhaps there's even a member of the dead who's like ready to break off with him, and it's one of those things where the person is kind of a little like Penelope, but it's the wrong height, right? It's the wrong like something where like he moves to put his arms around her, but it's not the right proportions, and that's when he realizes that he's played so well that he distracted even himself.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, and I think like is there some kind of sense that because he's doing what he's best at, there's like a little bit of him getting into the rhythm of the underworld, right? That he is just acting like another inhabitant, and almost he gets a kind of a shock when he wonders if this will be what it's like when he does die. He will
Hmm.
just
Yeah, I
be
like that.
doing this over and over again. Yeah, perfect. The next scene is the baths. So the singer sings of the pools the dead wash in and drink from. What do those who drink from them lose? Why do they still use the baths despite that? And the lover speaks of the compromises I made for the singer.
Yeah, I think the baths are beautiful. They're tiled. There are attendants, and the tiles are abstract, in the patternings, but they're abstract in a way that kind of makes it a pleasant place to just rest your eyes. Right, it draws you in, and that when people come out of the baths, they're less substantial. And it's a kind of a gradual thing. So, someone who's bathed once, you could still take them by the hand without too much of a difference. Um, but because the difference is so small, it doesn't feel like an enormous cost. And because the difference is so small, it doesn't feel like you're different per se. It feels like you're lighter. You can move faster. You can dance more quickly. You can climb higher. So it feels like being given new things. But the more and more you go, now there are people who look really like shades.
So it's like in the baths, like everyone is pretty much exactly the same. They're all doing the same thing. It's like their individuality is being washed out, and that thing that they're not doing anymore because they're in the baths is kind of being erased. Yeah, I like that.
Oh, and I think they're really physically becoming insubstantial
Yeah, yeah,
gradually.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's a kind of metaphysical transformation going on all levels, right? Cool. Speak of the compromises that I made for the singer. What did you need to change? Did the singer ask you to? Yeah. Um, yeah, I think it's probably something really straightforward, like those earrings ended up going back in the box, where um, where maybe we kind of see her look at them at night, you know, like on her bedside locker or whatever, um, but not wearing them when Milosh is around. And it's like that part of that part of her can't be displayed when he's around because it just causes this havoc, and he becomes the person she doesn't want him to be, right? Which is this kind of jealous, petulant kind of guy. And obviously the singer didn't ask me to do that because that would be that would be like what you would almost want.
Nice.
um, I'm not sure if there. I mean, it says speak of the compromises. I'm kind of happy with that one. I think that's kind of encompassing enough to kind of show what's going on.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it seems like it was an unappreciated compromise because for me, it doesn't count as a compromise. It's just being reasonable.
I mean, you still have that song, right? Um, that kind of that warped that previous song that you had made about Penelope,
Mhm.
and yeah, you probably never mention it, right? That those earrings never appear again in your presence, and it's
Yeah.
like I didn't notice, or yeah. So together we play out how the lover prepares to meet with the rulers of the underworld. Do they indulge in the baths? Do they avoid them? Um, so I am not. So when the question says, "Do they indulge in the baths? Do they avoid them?" I would have thought they were referring to the lover, except everywhere else it does that kind of in the question. It always says, "Does the singer? Does the lover?" So I'm wondering if this is referring to the rulers of the underworld. Did they indulge in the baths or did they avoid them? I don't know.
It, read the question one more time.
Yeah, play out how the lover prepares to meet the rulers of the underworld. Do they indulge in the baths? Do they avoid them?
I think it's a question about how you're preparing. So I
Yeah,
think they
yeah,
is the lover here, but I see how it's ambiguous.
yeah. Everywhere else it says like, does the singer or does the lover,
Hmm.
which is why I'm wondering. But yeah,
I'd be interested in either, approach you want to take to that question,
yeah,
to be
yeah.
honest. So I'm up for either to be the one we explore.
I think we. I think just due to the the nature of the underworld, right? Penelope's clothes are still kind of wet from the waterfall, and um, we see her, kind of shed them to go into the baths, um, and they're just dumped, right? And then a new set of clothes, more fitting to the court, are laid out for her. Um, yeah, and I think like the baths are really enticing, like that. They're so unlike the town and the path here. They seem to be um, really indulgent and exactly what you would need after a tiring journey, right? Um, and I think like the cup of water at the well in the town, Penelope just doesn't have any second thoughts about going in to bathe herself. Um, it's a luxury, but not an alien one to her. Um, and I wonder, do we see like any? I know it's only repeated exposure that you kind of become a shade, but I wonder if we see a little bit of the kind of shine in her eyes leave. Maybe it's just because she's relaxing, right? But we see a little bit of the glint or the spark in her fade away as she bathes.
I like that. And is there anything else we see her doing just to compose herself before she goes in? Is there anything uh, you know, she's strongly remembering or looking forward to?
I think she's not a singer, but she can kind of hold a tune, right? But we kind of hear her sing a little bit, a motif from the original song that Milosh wrote for her, with the necklace in it, right? Or with the
The
earrings in it.
earrings,
Yeah.
yeah. Nice.
Um, and maybe it's kind of like a discordant echo, right? In these kind of vast baths, but we kind of the return echo is a little bit of that discordant, mocking, cynical um, variation that he wrote afterwards.
Hmm. That's great.
Yeah, so I'm kind of happy with that. I think
Mhm.
if we ignore the kind of participation of the rulers in the underworld, in the baths. I think we have probably enough there.
That sounds good to me.
So the next scene is the shades. The singer sings of concerns the lover had that you ignored. Why were they not important to you? What were you preoccupied by?
Hmm. I wonder if it might be some form of beauty you were attentive to that I just didn't care as much about. This, an exception to my usual rule. Especially as I feel, I have such an important connection to beauty that anything that doesn't interest me probably isn't, beautiful in this transcendent way. So what's something you might have loved, that I wouldn't have entered into?
I wonder if um, so far, like we've seen Milosh be like really attentive to things that are right there in front of him, right? But how about like he doesn't look up? He's not like a sky and birds person. Um, so I think there is maybe um, maybe Penelope is always kind of looking up in the sky to see the flights of birds or whatever it is migrating, or just kind of murmurations or whatever of birds in the air. And this is the kind of thing that just doesn't interest Milo. She's always kind of looking at the ground or right in front of him, which is usually so good, but in this case, it's like those things are not my concern.
And I feel like there might be moments where you're, really engaged in looking at this when you feel like I was attentive to. I'm clearly looking off into the distance, thinking about something I'm going to write. Or even when I take an interest for a moment, it's briefly as inspiration without really sitting with it the way you want me to.
Yeah, so like I wonder if we see them sitting on a wall together, um, maybe taking lunch or something, and she's kind of pointing out something to him on the horizon, and just like that, his gaze just drifts away from it, back down to what's right in front of him after a moment,
Mm-hmm.
and she is enthralled by what's happening on a longer term. That the changes are happening much more slowly than he would want. Yeah. Okay. Um, so I speak of the denizens of the underworld who have forgotten who they are. Do they still appear human? What do they endlessly seek? So I think we see, and maybe this is like as she is passing through to the court, um, and those who have been in the baths for too long or too many times, and their their eyes are glassy and a little bit dazed, and they are kind of just inattentive. There's no there's no spark there. There's no kind of turning as someone new enters the room. They're just very methodical or mechanical in their movements. Um, and I think, what do they endlessly seek? I mean, I think they never just stop and look around. They just are always moving. So they're always kind of doing something productive in terms of what the king of the underworld wants them to do. Always moving, never resting. Just yeah, I think that works. So together we play out the singer's response to the shades influence. What do they try to take from the singer? Does the singer rebuke them, and how?
Trying to think about what they might be trying to take. Do you have any ideas on that front?
I mean, I wonder if he is still wearing his kind of normal clothes,
I
and
think
maybe
so.
in this kind of area he obviously stands out, and they are maybe maybe they're trying to push him into the baths. Maybe they're trying to, strip him and make him bathe. Um, that's what everyone who isn't a shade does when they're in this neighborhood, right? So it's um, so I mean, on the face of it, it seemed like it would be quite horrifying, right, to have these people just kind of pushing, or not quite people anymore, pushing you to bathe, like they are implacable and cannot be reasoned with.
Yeah, then I think, kind of like what happened with Hermes, where there were the discordant notes that were frightening or even painful. I think the way I work my way free is by taking advantage of the fact that we are in a tiled bath and playing something where it's almost the opposite this time. Like the original plucking does sound beautiful, but I'm timing it with the echoes and kind of hitting my stride as I hear it until the whole baths are just like echoing with these painful dissonances. I hate it even. But I think I'm trying to like basically clear them. No one can stand to be in here, and then no one will be here to bother me. And really the opposite mood of when I, snuck through by inviting others into a dance. Here I'm going to drive everyone away from me and from this bustling place.
Yeah, yeah. And I wonder, like, do you see something that gives you hope? Like you see Penelope's discarded cloak in some corner,
Oh yeah, I like that.
like something for the first time that tells you that you're on the right path.
Yes, that's very good.
And like, what do you think that, like, you drive the shades from the bats? Are they hurting in a way that doesn't make sense to them? Like, this is maybe like whatever kind of small seed of humanity is left inside them, you're torturing that. Is that
Yeah, I think it's kind of painful on two fronts. First it's simply painful, but it's a more intense feeling than many of the insubstantial shades have felt in some time. So even if it were a pleasant experience, it would still be overwhelming and too
mm,
much.
yeah, perfect. Okay, so the next one is the Queen. The singer sings of the Queen of the Underworld. Why do they continually return here? What passion did they once hold? Um, and the lover speaks of my departure. Why did I leave? So, yeah. What do you think? I mean, why do they continually return here? Kind of suggests that they are in both worlds, or they can be in both worlds.
I think there's you know, in some ways the underworld we've described is a quieter place than the living world. Things are simplified, pared down, but it also means that it's in some ways more restful, and what stands out with particular intensity. So that there's almost, as the singer would put it, it's the difference between kind of attending a full like concerto with a big orchestra. And that's the living world. It's big, it's loud, it's complicated, it has huge potential for complex beauty. But the world of the dead, isn't spare in a way the queen finds, limited or too small. It's very intense and pure, like a very like intense bittersweet plain chocolate dessert where the whole focus is on the chocolate, or a very tart berry sorbet, and the
Yeah,
the world of the dead has that kind of concentrated focus, even as many other things fade into the background. And she likes both. Each place feels like a restful place after visiting the other.
yeah, yeah. And the second question is, what passion did they once hold?
Is that one mine or yours? I
That's
forgot.
yours, yeah.
Okay. Hmm. Hmm. Well, tell me what you think of this. I'm imagining the Queen of the Underworld as someone more like whatever, is it though the very fast runner in Greek mythology, but is someone whose whole joy in her earthly world and earthly life was physical exertion and running and swimming and hunting. And that's a passion that can't have the same expression here.
Okay, yeah, yeah. So yeah, I speak of my departure. Why did I leave? So I think there is the night before I leave, there's a storm, and I find myself at the base of that tree again, but this time alone. And I'm kind of thinking of the way we sat together that first night, and everything seemed like so pure and done with intent, and then kind of just playing over the arguments, the fights uh, over every little piece of kind of jealous imagining in Milosh's mind. And I think we see her like open a box, take it out from under her cloak, and like have the earrings there, and putting them on, um, and then like deciding to go to someone who that knows her more than Milosh ever could. Sorry.
No, it's fair. I don't know that Milosh is a great option for her as we've told this story.
Okay. So together we play out the lovers' council with the queen. Does the queen show sympathy, disdain? Do they see themselves in the lover? How does the queen advise the king? Um, so I guess is it like an
Have you,
antechamber or the court, but the king has not yet arrived or something like that? I don't know.
yeah, I think the royal yeah, I like actually the idea of her catching you in the antechamber, or even having the servant direct you to her like room in which she readies herself to enter the court.
Yeah,
And have you met her before in your previous love affair, or is it the first time you're meeting face to face?
I think we may have been introduced, right, and met in a very kind of controlled circumstance. Maybe this is exactly why the queen wants Penelope away from the king. So there's not that kind of oversight on what they say to each other.
I think the queen says, "Have you come to stay, or will you be tramping off to other lovers again?"
I don't know. I mean, you tramp off every so often, don't you?
We are of different orders, you and I, and she kind of straightens her crown a little bit. And I think the impression you get a bit is that like part of why the queen has a grudge against you is because you broke things off with the king. And she doesn't mind him stepping out, but it feels like an insult to him and thus an insult to her. People are supposed to pine when he chooses to leave them rather than go off and find a new kind of happiness.
Well, maybe I didn't quite appreciate um, him previously as much as I ought to have.
Kind of looks like, a little satisfied with that and says, "How do you plan to make your apologies?"
Um, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I should. The king doesn't strike me like a man who wants me to go to him on my knees begging for his forgiveness.
the queen kind of makes a like tutting noise and says, we don't always want what we truly deserve.
Does he deserve my abject sorrow that I made a foolish decision in the past?
Well, you wounded your human lover in coming here. Do you think you didn't wound the king at all in departing from him?
I mean, how much could I really wound the king? I mean,
She kind of
I'm a different order than you, obviously.
she kind of like pauses for a moment and then with a slightly warmer and more open voice, tells you, you're right, of course. You're a child, a fly in comparison to us, but he is generous. And she's speaking with real admiration of the man she loves, right? Uh, he does not hold back what he has to give. When it is spurned, he is not unmoved.
But he wants me here, right?
She gives a silent nod. And actually, she even then after a moment adds, he sent the raft waiting for you.
Is that not how it works? Should I have swum or climbed over or something?
He sent it for you. He held it as others died, waiting for you to make this journey.
Well, that seems like a gesture I should thank him for.
And she goes, well, prepare yourself to do so. And then she sweeps out of the room into the throne room, and the servant is ready to escort you back out so you can approach the proper way.
Yeah. So do we see the queen advise the king then before we cut to the next scene?
I think we kind of just see as she heads into the throne room that she lays her hand on his shoulder with real tenderness, and we see her whisper in his ear, but not hear what. But her affect is warmer than it was when you first met her.
Yeah. Okay, great. So we're the final of our scenes. The king. The singer, sing of what you would do to repair things between you and the lover. What would you lose and what could be enough? And then I will speak of the ruler of the underworld.
I think, to repair things and to show that I've made some kind of amends, I've I think I pull out like an instrument I've saved for this moment, to play now for the king and the lover and anyone else within earshot. And I play a stringed instrument, but now this is one of my own devising. And unlike the one I hold, this one has feathers attached to it. So that when I pluck the strings, it's not just the music you hear, and it's a different, slightly more muted song because of the feathers attached to the string, but there's, a flutter and a visual thing going on here. And it's my attempt to appreciate things I haven't seen, like birds and my lover. And it's an instrument that doesn't put my own talent at the center completely, but makes it part of a larger beauty. Someone else could play this instrument, and awe people without being as talented as I am.
So the second question is like, what would you lose? So this is the kind of your level of performance, right?
I think I'd lose what people loved me for in some ways, right? This is, to an extent, it's a different kind of beauty on one view of it, but it's also a gimmick in another view of it. And it makes my music less about me and my genius and it's more something where other people could follow in my footsteps, all of which pains me.
Yeah. Okay. To speak of the ruler of the underworld, are they intimidating, powerful, charming? How do they view humanity? I think, we see him speaking with his queen, and he seems quite warm, right? And quite open. And then I think as soon as his gaze turns on the rest of the court, that kind of openness becomes very forbidding. Um, and I don't think there's any, like, you couldn't describe anything that has changed, but it's just his whole demeanor kind of controls the court. Um, how do they view humanity? I think um, yeah, ultimately they all become shades, right? In his view, but like for a brief moment, they are something perfect, um, and that's kind of what he enjoys in humans, right? That brief kind of flare of perfection, of kind of genius that he probably doesn't have.
Nice.
So together we play out the singer's confrontation with the king. Why do they let the lover go? Is the king moved, convinced, or tricked?
Yeah, I think in kind of keeping with the flashy yet humble instrument I've brought, um, I, instead of kind of arguing with the king or explicitly bargaining with the king, I say, that people have loved, my music is to help people love the things that I love. And in Penelope, I found that you had loved her already, before I did. And it was, for once, I was the audience observing a love, and in my case, failing to let it inflame my own. But I better understand now what you appreciate about her. And I beg the chance to spend our lifetimes together before she returns to you here in her proper time. And then I play for him the song in praise of her beauty that incorporates the earrings and how they illuminate her as a gesture of real respect for his love.
Um, so, I mean, what do you think um, the kind of reaction in the rest of the court is, maybe from the queen, especially?
I feel like I'm actually, given what we've drawn out, I feel more confident this is well received by the queen, since in some ways it's praising my lover by praising her king for his eye, right? And if she feels that possibly Penelope scorned his attention, I'm paying real homage to it. Though it's also then not as entirely about Penelope herself, and I
Yeah,
am
yeah,
negotiating with the king rather than her. So I'm not sure. And of course, telling someone you've loved my lover very beautifully, and I'm asking you to hold off for a while longer in this love that's very powerful, so that I can enjoy it in the meantime, is not the easiest thing to make as a persuasive case, but it
yeah.
is very flattering to him.
And do you think maybe we see like the queen see that flattery and kind of stoke it in him,
Yes.
um, because this is like her angle, to an extent, right? Is that she can stave off this interloper who doesn't really understand the king. Um, so yeah. I mean, I wonder. I mean, so like this is kind of, we can play out the scene a little bit more. I think I wonder if Penelope and Milosh kind of talk or interact before the kind of decision is made.
I mean, I guess part of the question is like, does Penelope approach Milosh? Because he's the one really coming as a supplicant here.
Yeah, yeah. So I think she does, and she kind of looks at this strangely attired instrument, right, with those feathers adorning it. Um, and maybe they're like there's a sheen on them, or there's like an iridescent glint of them that hasn't been dulled by the underworld. Um, and I wonder when when did you have time to collect feathers on the way here?
I I sang my shock, my loss, and I felt like the whole world listened, and the birds came and sat at my feet as I sang. I, tore my garments in grief, and they plucked their chests and offered them to me.
I wasn't gone that long.
But I was gone, not fully with you.
Because this pantomime of grief is not what I want. I want your attention, and not for a crowd, not for an audience of one, for me.
I I took a great risk in coming. Oh,
You
please
did.
believe, please believe I will risk myself to to gain you, to be what you needed me to be, to lose myself and become a new person.
I mean, I don't want you to be a new person. I just want to see who you really are. I'm not, I mean, I'm not sure you can do that. Maybe if you tell me you can do that, I'll believe you.
I think he takes her hand and says, like, I promise. And it's clear, at least, as he understands it, he totally means it. It's totally sincere.
Okay. Okay. Any other detail we want to add to that, or we move on?
I think I'm good for there.
Okay. Cool. So, in Act 3, Doubt, once the final descent scene is played out, the lover has a choice to make. Will they follow the singer back to their old life, or will they take their own path out of the underworld? Um, this is when I make a little choice on that character keeper.
Hmm.
Um, so, let me. Okay. So you imagine I've scribbled my note inside my envelope, right?
Yes.
But I've chosen it. So the lover should not speak their choice aloud. The singer chooses whether or not to look. It's a long way out of the underworld. Take as much time as you need to decide.
And just so I haven't played the game before. I don't have the game materials. You know, um, it sounds like we're at least setting off together if I have the option to look, right? Or I know that there's a
Exactly. Yeah.
possibility you're following.
So I think we
Uh,
are like leaving the court together, and then there's like I guess the wondering whether Penelope is still with you entirely all the way back. So, I mean, I think we can play through this a little bit as well before you make your choice of whether to look in game in the envelope or not, right? I guess that's kind of the looking behind you. But, um,
I
so
I
yeah,
actually think I know what Milos's answer is. I think he's not going to look behind him, but this isn't, it's only partly a sign of trust in her. It's also his confidence in himself,
okay,
right?
yeah,
Everything has yielded to him on his journey here, and he just feels like, just as everything went his way coming down, just as his kind of charisma and talent move people, even though it's not what she asked for, it's hard for him not to believe things will work out as he wanted one more time.
the uh, the
But to click,
exuberant
don't look.
overconfidence of.
Yeah. So
um,
what happens after I've chosen?
so so if the singer looks inside the envelope, the lover is doomed to remain in the underworld. The singer
Hmm.
returns alone but knows the answer. And if the singer decides not to look, the lover should destroy it, and the singer will never truly know the answer. Okay. Um,
But don't they know in their life?
yeah.
Oh,
So eventually, right? But I guess we in an epilogue maybe that belongs in an epilogue.
got it.
Um, so yeah, I think um, I think you hear Penelope's kind of footsteps all the way behind you, and she's kind of staring intently at him, almost expecting him to look around, right? Um, um, but she follows him all the way, and I think she is like, uh, even though there's a part of her that doubts his promises, like there's another part of her that wants um, this promise to be true, right? And to hold him, the only way she can kind of hold him to this promise is by being around, to see how he is. So she, uh, I guess, sticks around for for a while at least.
All right.
Okay. So I don't know. Do you want to have an epilogue? Um, Maybe one where, as players, at least we're satisfied that you know the answer, even if
Yeah.
the characters don't.
Yeah, I think so. Which might mean that you need to take the lead on it.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Um, so yeah, so I think you see them back on the farm, and I think she encourages him to like go back to his music, even though he had kind of offered that up as something he was willing to sacrifice. But she knows that without the music, he's never going to be himself. Um, but on the other hand, she is always kind of waiting on a wall, looking at the sky, and kind of paying attention to how much he really is looking at it now. If and maybe this is a test that he knows that she is setting for him, and so whether or not he is pretending to pay attention or paying attention, that's the sign of passing the test for her, that he is willing um, to seem interested.
And I,
Um,
I think he does it much of the time, right? But he has habits that are hard to break, and he isn't always fully present. But he's newly apologetic looking when he kind of when she or the world around her slips his attention. So there's a real improvement of some type, though it's not exactly what he promised and not exactly what she hoped for. But no, I think in this epilogue, it's not totally clear whether it will improve as he practices or not.
yeah, yeah. Okay. So yeah, I think we can probably leave it there.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I will stop the recording and then we'll do a quick debrief.